Good morning wherever you are in the world. We are Unique Labs and this is the Fashion of Web3 podcast where we deliver insights into one of the hottest Web3 industries.
We are Taco and Pauline, the co-founders of Unique Labs. Follow us on social media and join our Discord to stay up to date with new episodes and the development of our fashion and lifestyle metaverse. And now, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the second episode of our Fashion of Web3 podcast. Today we're speaking to Nico Fara, founder of Fashion DAO, Chief Metaverse Officer and Queendom. Nico helps the fashion industry shift to Web3. She unites Web3 fashion experts and supports brands with the responsible adoption of Web3 technologies. She's also an inclusion activist, meaning that she's paving the way for underrepresented groups to join the space, and she brings her accessibility viewpoint into her daily work. On a side note, this podcast episode was recorded as a live Twitter space. That's something we wanted to try, but we decided not to go ahead with for the next episodes, so please bear with us. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, Pauline. Hi, Taco. Hi,
Hi.
Rachel, Permian. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being our guest. We're really excited to talk with you about everything from a business side of a fashion in the NFT, Web3, the metaverse.
Yay, so excited to have you. It's the second episode of our podcast.
Thank you. Likewise. I'm excited to know more about your business, how it's growing. I know we've been in touch a while back. I love your vision and values around, empowerment and diversity. So I think we're very aligned in that regard, and I love to be supporting you in any ways I can.
Is same. I think that, it's actually how we get connected. I think it's the values that bring us to each other. We're actually really happy to start sharing our progress because, we're expanding much broader, I would say, than it was at the beginning. We're at the beginning, it was just an NFT collection. And now we are working on developing our version of how we see the future of fashion in the metaverse. We will be sharing a bit more updates about it soon. And today we're talking with Nico Fara, a person who I met months ago at the beginning. She is a Chief Metaverse Officer, founder of Fashion DAO, and Web3 strategist for fashion brands. And I would love to start the conversation by letting you introduce yourself and give us a little bit information about your background.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me here. I'm going to go a little bit back in time. I was the first child of an academic-focused family. I had to act like a leader from a very young age. I grew up in a country that women are not always valued properly, and realized that there is so much more to be done in this world to empower others. And I also loved math and physics and solving problems. So that's why I basically chose electrical engineering and decided to follow that. And then I kind of hit the ceiling in my birth country, decided to apply and get a scholarship, come to the US. That happened about 8 years ago. Started building my life from scratch. Was part of a PhD program. Immediately realized this is not for me. I prefer to go back, solve the problems in the world. So got my master's and then started working a few years, learning, gaining experiences and building networks. And then started building my own businesses that aligned with my own values. And, being in those male-dominated industries, I always wanted to empower women and non-binary folks. And then I always loved fashion and beauty because they're great ways to express ourselves, even though being in the engineering world, I didn't have much of that. So I tried to combine my passion for fashion and beauty with my technical knowledge and network. And so I started a couple of companies in the beauty tech and then fashion tech space and wanted to make these industries more efficient using technology. So solving a lot for inefficiencies like returns, sustainability issues. One of our technologies was around virtual try-on. The other was software that will help you to recommend size, to get the right size, get the right style. So all of this type of technologies that just, makes our decision-making better and easier as we are all getting busier in our lives and want to still look good and express ourselves. Me coming from outside of this industry, actually, and being an avid fashion consumer with this engineering viewpoints really gave me a differentiation that, helped me a lot lot in my business journey. So I transitioned into Web3 as the fashion brands that we were working with, that we noticed they're getting excited and interested about the opportunities in the metaverse, building virtual stores, creating NFTs for loyalty programs. When we started analyzing all this space, we realized that there are so many gaps in this space, and gaps from the business side of things being like not very realistic environments, mostly blocky, gimmicky, not being aligned with the aesthetic expectations of the fashion consumers and fashion brands, especially the luxury one. The brand image is everything. And the other part was the accessibility side of things, how a lot of these environments or metaverse environments are gated by certain crypto wallet requirements. And that was another problem, or some of them require certain hardware or software requirement. And all of these are just barriers to entry. And if you're really looking to make this the future of internet and make this accessible for all, this needs to go away, at least in this transition process. So the other thing that I personally got connected to was the lack of representation. And I wanted to change that because I felt like I'm back in the engineering world, and I'm the only female engineer, and this is just not right. And this is not how the future should be. And I believe each of us with different backgrounds are bringing so much value that this future of internet could look a lot better if we all come together. All of these motivations for empowerment and diversity led me to start a metaverse environment called Queendom. And that's focused on empowering women and minorities, helping them by giving them the right tools and infrastructure so they can build this future the way they want to experience it. And then the other part that we call it responsible adoption of Web3 led to us also creating a B2B solution called Chief Metaverse Officer, where it is a metaverse as a service company and consulting solution, where we work with these brands and retailers to not only offer them these solutions, hyper-realistic, interactive, engaging virtual environments that are accessible via browser and are connected to a virtual NFT marketplace with zero gas fee and payable with fiat. That's one side of the business. And I always realized that, we shouldn't just focus on the big brands. We should also empower, and the whole point of Web3 is empowerment and democratization. How can we support these indie brands and indie designers and giving them the right tools and support? So I started looking how we can expand this to have a bigger impact. And that's when the idea of the Fashion DAO came in. Hopefully empower and onboard a lot of these designers, brands. So hopefully these technologies help this fashion industry be better and more efficient in the long run.
Thank you, Nico. You mentioned so many topics that we want to talk a bit deeper. I would say that, first of all, it's so impressive how diverse your background is. I also really, really love the subject that you mentioned about equity and diversity in the space, especially the metaverse. I think that's something that kind of brought me to you in the first place. I heard you in the space and I instantly reached out to you because we're sharing the same values. Actually, Pauline was today at the Women in IT Summit in London talking about how we can make the metaverse more accessible and more inclusive for diverse groups of people and not only for traditional end users, and finally kind of overcome the problem that we have in our real life. I see kind of like a problem that mostly we see in the space only big fashion brands. Can you give us a bit more thoughts about why we see less independent designers and less smaller fashion brands joining the NFT and Web3 space in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important to just see the difference that these technologies are bringing. Fashion brands and designers, they don't need any fibers or even factories. They can bring their designs to life by just computer programs and 3D animations. So that's already so empowering. And then we have a lot of demand. Millions of gamers worldwide are buying accessories, clothing, skins for their avatars. So this is a proven business model. And then there's like customers that are now needing to dress up their avatars to express themselves. Like we are going to spend more and more time in this enhanced digital experiences, or called metaverse. So we do need a full closet to express ourselves with. And then the purpose of the clothing is no longer limited to the functionality. It's more about the emotion that you're expressing, your values, your ethos. And so this is one thing that is so empowering about digital fashion and virtual fashion. And it's also not limited to avatars. You can also wear it in our current Web2 form of communication. Now the problem comes to education. And that's what we are so much focused on in the Fashion DAO, because we understand that without education, people are not going to get inspired. It's that barrier to entry that needs to be removed. There is so much more into this. One being the sustainability. Digital clothes produce 97% less emission than physical items. Then there is the versatility. Like, you can have no boundaries in the fashion. You can wear waterfall, fire, everything you imagine. The other part is about traceability and supply chain transparency. We all know how bad the fashion industry has been doing with these concepts. So why don't we use this blockchain technology to trace where the garment is coming from? The other aspect is accessibility. Financially and geographically, we are seeing that access to this luxury and couture clothing are just becoming more and more. And then, access to fashion shows. How many people can attend a physical fashion show? The other part is about, the status symbol that, NFTs are offering. That's also something we have been seeing for so long in the fashion space, with the luxury especially. And then decentralization of the power, economy, culture, and all of these aspects are just like the whys that we should be focused on. And if we do share that, I'm sure there's going to be a huge adoption.
That is so interesting, Nico. Thank you for sharing all this. We can relate, and the why is definitely one of the big things that are getting more and more important for fashion brands. So, keeping that in mind, what do you think would be the ideal strategy for a new fashion business that is trying to establish itself?
I would just share some of the possibilities, and then I hope that everyone can kind of check with their goals and vision and values. And if there is more that needs to be discussed, I'm happy to take that offline with any of you. But yeah, in terms of opportunities, if you are talking about someone who is coming from the traditional fashion to the Web3 fashion space, obviously we do have a lot of opportunities with digital fashion, Clo 3D, Marvelous Designer. All these type of softwares are very easy to learn, using these software technologies. But also in the Fashion DAO, we are working on having very established workshops where you can actually ask questions from the experts and interact and learn, which we believe that's a better way of learning. So after you learn the skills for this new world, then you would need to make sure your business model is in place for these new technologies and new communities. So then you need to see if you have a community in place already from Web2, or followers or likes don't necessarily translate to community in Web3, as we all know. So we have to build a deeper relationship with our community. That's the very next step, or I would say like maybe even the first step. Like, you want to start building your community from now. I always say, like, we shouldn't look at them as customers. They can be your actual team, they can be your stakeholders. And so after a community is built, after your technical knowledge is in place, then you need a team to start building. And what is better than collaboration and co-creation? So that's another side that we are tackling with the Fashion DAO, to facilitate this collaboration and co-creation, because in many of these designers or artists are coming from very focused backgrounds, and they're very great at what they're doing, but they don't necessarily have the business background or tech background or marketing or all of those. And it could be kind of overwhelming if you expect one person to do it all, and then it kind of prevents them from doing what they're good at. So that's where we need to partner with others and find like-minded people with similar goals and values. And so joining this type of communities like the Fashion DAO, you can find people that you can resonate with. Hopefully you come together to build something amazing, and then get some support from your community and get them involved to participate in your mission and vision. And that's where the idea of DAOs come in. They are so empowering because you can build with the community, you can recruit them, you can compensate them for offering you value and incentivize them. And whether it's through monetary compensation or rewards in many other ways, it's a matter of, kind of making everything win-win. So this is more sustainable. Throughout building all of this, you don't have to go through the challenges of traditional fashion industry and, a lot of waste of creating things that you don't know if people really want. You can actually build things that are going to be aligned with their needs and wants. And so that's very much sustainable and it's going to be efficient. Giving you an example, when you're selling these garments as NFTs, you can actually have direct contact and with these users and know exactly what their body measurements are, what their requirements are before you create that. So you basically have a made to order type of business model, and that is an option. The other part is about kind of creating a digital twin if you want to create some sort of design that people can wear in the real world and have that kind of representation in the real world. So you can link that to your existing NFT. That could be done with different technologies. And so there's so many ways that you could be incorporating tech and these amazing ideas of Web3, but do it in a very sustainable, responsible way.
What I'm wondering is, like, if you look at big brands, like really big established chains like Mango, H&M, also with H&M recently launching their first virtual showroom, I'm wondering whether it is going to be difficult for these huge fashion houses to actually switch to some kind of DAO model. I wonder if it's possible. Do you think it's possible that big brands change and become more like fashion DAOs? Or is it more likely that there will be like new emerging brands that are operating like a DAO?
Sure. Before I answer that, I'd like to share a little bit about what are the possibilities for more established brands, because we just touched on, the new designers, emerging designers. So first of all, there's the option of like doing kind of short-term presence. Like you could be doing like events in these metaverse environments, or you could be doing NFTs, like we see a lot of it, because they want to offer this exclusive access and personalized experiences like we have been seeing for so long in luxury. There's also new promotional marketing tools that are coming with it. And we see a lot of that happening with this Web3 adoption of a lot of these big brands that are so much focused on the marketing side. And the reason to that is coming from their goals and their KPIs. They have to respond to their shareholders. They need those ROIs quite immediately. For those reasons, they prefer to go with an easier route of tapping to existing gaming environments or doing some partnerships, NFT projects that gives them the higher ROI. There are other ways you could have more long-term strategy with the virtual stores and fashion shows and so on. Then there's the part about education. If you really want mass adoption, we do need to do that education part, which seems like a lot of these bigger brands are avoiding it at this point. But this needs to happen before we can expect a real change in the industry. So there are so many ways basically that brands can get involved, and it doesn't have to be just a full-blown DAO. I want to also share a little bit about DAOs for those of you who are not too familiar with it. People are using it in many ways. So first of all, it needs to be decentralized. That definition of decentralization is all over the place. Sometimes people just tap into their communities to ask them for a simple vote on something they already decided. They call that decentralized. Or, you can be on the other side of the spectrum, like what we are pushing for, which is every decision, every step that we take needs to be coming from the community and be communicated and have the full transparency with the community. So that's the part about decentralization, and that autonomous part is using these technologies that we have in Web3 to just make these communities more efficient. We have had nonprofits and charities and Facebook groups for so long, but they were not very operated efficiently because most of the work was on one person or a group of people. And so if you think about the definition of DAO, and if you look at most of these bigger brands and retailers, they have been established as centralized organizations. So wanting them to go full-blown decentralized is kind of contradicting with their fundamentals. So what we see even with the metaverses, they have this centralized entity that is building the tech, and then you have the decentralized foundation where you actually kind of get the community involved. This is a transition process. We're not going to get there overnight. There are a lot of infrastructure tools that need to be built before we can expect the full adoption of these organizations to DAOs. I always advise brands to even start like just having conversations with their communities.
In this space, I think we've seen a lot of extremely interesting partnerships. I have the feeling people might be fighting over the partnerships. Do you have any comments on that in terms of brand partnerships?
The competition is now turning to collaboration and co-creation. They are realizing that there is enough space for everyone. And so if we bring our differences, we are actually going to make things even better. And in terms of like whether or not there's going to be a fight or competition over partnership, I hope not. I think it goes back to understanding the whys again and the values and where we're going and why we're doing this.
I absolutely agree with you, Nico. I would love to ask you, like, what about the challenges? Like, how do you think, like, what are we facing right now? And if there is anything that you see kind of stands in a way of evolving the space in a way that we're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. It's not that only the big brands can educate. I think we all can start. We all can come together and do amazing things, and that we need to do a lot more in that regard. The next step I think that needs to be improved is like about inclusivity. So we talked about how a lot of these environments or projects are not being built by diverse teams, and that's a huge gap in the industry. So an example of that would be inclusive avatars. We see even the best in the market avatars are still looking very skinny, very similar body types, and it's just not making us feel like ourselves. The other topic is, as we all know, is interoperability. We need to be able to take our garments and avatars from one environment to the other. That requires a lot of standards and guidelines in place. The other part is about more decentralization, which we talked about, and it comes from having more tools. And, like I talked about the DAO tools that need to happen. As these processes become more seamless and efficient, then hopefully more people and more communities are going to adopt that. And the last thing I can mention is in regards to tech, we need more GPU power. We need broadband internet, 5G to process high poly garments.
I really love what you said, and I 100% agree. And definitely to make the spaces more accessible and inclusive for people of diverse groups, for people with disabilities. It's about attention, it's about understanding what problems we actually made in real life and how we can avoid them in the new space that we are building. What would make the metaverse something different from what we have, like, just a VR world right now, and what would make it last in the future?
We need to make sure it feels real. And that feeling real has so many ways you can look at it. It could be any way from the sensors that we could have, whether it's in our garments that we're wearing, or a watch, or anything that touches our body. So those type of sensors can communicate what is happening in our real body and real world, and transition that to these more enhanced experiences that are more engaging and more global. And so that's one way that we could get to more realistic experiences. The other part is about like overall latency and the overall experience. We don't want to have friction. We don't want to exclude people because they don't know anything about crypto. They should be able to pay with credit card. The other part is about like hardware, software requirements. The fact that a lot of these metaverse environments right now are relying on your GPU power, or require you to download an app, or headsets and so on. I think those are very limiting factors. That's why we focus on browser-based and streaming-based type of metaverse environments. So, and I would say like this metaverse is going to happen whether you like it or not, because we all need deeper human connection in the world.
Yeah, the accessibility is a huge issue, and I think obviously it's just going to be a matter of like months until more and more people will get access to the spaces. We wanted to ask you, looking at the future, what are your visions, your personal perspective? How is it going to look like at the fashion industry?
I think we touched a lot on the ways that they could adopt, and I think it always starts with the community and understanding the importance of community, and then understanding the ethos of the space and the whys, and then they can figure out the right strategy according to that. And so we talked about virtual stores, we talked about virtual fashion shows, we talked about events, and so on. So in terms of like what the future looks like, I think it's going to be definitely more democratized in many aspects that we talked about. Decentralization of culture, economy, power, and tech, I think is going to be one of the last aspects, which is the hardest, and is preventing many to adopt it at the moment. And so when that happens, we're going to see really magical experiences being shaped. And yeah, this fashion industry is just going to get more and more powerful. A lot of people want to express themselves, but they're concerned about the environment. So they don't necessarily purchase anything or don't consume as much, which is actually good. It's a responsible consumption. But at the same time, we as human, we do need to express ourselves in many ways. So I think the fact that we can resolve a lot of those challenges that have been for so long in the fashion industry with these technologies is so empowering, so exciting. And I think with this communities like the Fashion DAO, like the things that you guys are doing with education, we're just gonna expedite and accelerate this adoption, and hopefully we bring amazing minds to the space that will make this even better than we can imagine.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining us today. Did you find this conversation insightful? Do you have any questions we should address next time? Please send us all your questions, feedback, or topic ideas via Discord, where we'll have a channel for the podcast. Alternatively, feel free to send us an email or a message via our socials. Links are in the notes. Until next week.